When I first tried to lose fat, I thought it was all about working out more and eating less. But the truth is, the foods you choose to eat matter 10 times more than simply just the calories. Let me break down the rules that finally made dieting simple and sustainable for me. Okay, so the first component is how I eat. So there's basically two ways of going about this. You can either have intuitive eating or calorie counting. So the main difference is calorie counting is you're tracking the exact number of calories that are going into your body through an app or other method. And intuitive eating is where you just feel how full you are, feel how much food you eat, and based on your weight changes, you change how much you eat. So what I did was I practiced intuitive eating. The main drawback of intuitive eating is that it's very hard to be consistent, but once you are consistent, you can basically just eat whatever you want and you'll have an amazing life cutting. The reason I didn't do calorie counting was because it just got way too tedious because I had to track every single piece of food that I ate and I really didn't want to do that. So I just practiced this for a very long time and I got really good at it. So that's how I got abs. In order to follow the intuitive eating method, you need to practice. And what I mean by practice is measuring satiety. And what satiety is just how full you are. So if you eat a full meal and you're 100% full and then you gain weight, that means you probably shouldn't eat 100%. So for the next day, you try to eat 90%. And then if you still gain weight, then you need to go even lower to say 80%. And if this is the point where you start losing weight consistently, then this is the amount of fullness you should get before you stop eating. So practice aside, how can you actually incorporate this into daily life? Basically, you just need to change what food you buy. For example, instead of fatty meat like pork, you switch to lean meat like chicken. And then instead of vegetables like corn, you switch to cabbage, something that's leafy and green that will give you a lot of fiber. And instead of eating bread, you can eat potatoes. All right. So if you change what you buy, then you ultimately have no choice but to eat these healthier options. And then when you eat these healthier options, they keep you more full so that you can actually eat however much you want and not gain weight. Basically, once you buy these foods, all you need to do at that point is just track your satiety and see how much food you can eat before you start gaining weight, right? So just eat a baseline 100% meal one day and then lower that, see if you lose weight. So if you start losing weight at 90%, that's fine. Go eat at 90% for your meals and then you'll continue losing weight, keep that up for 3 to 6 months and you'll have your body. But if you're at 90% satiety and you don't lose weight, then obviously you have to go down to 80%. You just keep going down satiety for your meals until you get to a point where you start losing weight consistently. All right, so we learned how I eat. Now we gotta understand what I eat. My goal for what I eat is to be absolutely as full as possible, eating however much I want without tracking calories or any other macros like that. There's basically 3 main principles, and I just put them in a triangle so it's easier to remember. There's 3 main principles for fat loss. In your meals, you want to have protein, you want to have fiber, and you want to have water. So these 3 ingredients are the absolute most filling foods that you can eat. So for example, protein, you're gonna have chicken. Fiber, I ate a lot of lettuce. And then water, I just have it in stews or on the side. And the reason this works is because they don't have a lot of calories, right? So water, 0 calories. Fiber, 0 calories because you can't digest it. And protein is 4 calories per gram instead of fat, which is like 9 calories per gram. But we'll get into the nuance of that later. So by eating these low calorie, high satiety ingredients, you can be full, but you can still eat as much as you want because it will just take up space in your stomach without actually adding to your calorie count. Now I'll give you an example meal if you don't know what to cook. For stew, what I did a lot was I did beef, lean beef, seasoning of course, and then lettuce. So by combining these 3 with water, of course, I get a stew that tastes good. I can meal prep for the entire day, so I just eat 1 meal a day. I'll get into meal timings later. And I can just be full for the entire day without having to worry about cooking anytime else. And let's say you don't want to have stew, you can also have beef and rice, which is what I did a lot as well. So just lean beef, rice, seasonings, and then a small amount of oil. So that way you don't incorporate too much fat. Here's the reason for eating this framework besides satiety. Let's think about the opposite. The most fat-inducing foods, French fries, and then hamburgers. So the reason these foods over here make you so fat is because they have the 3 ingredients that are opposite to what I just said. They put carbs, fat, and salt all together. So think about it. French fries, the carbs are the potatoes, the fat is the oil that you fry it in, and then you just have salt as seasoning to make it taste good. But if you combine carbs and fats, this is the most important thing. If you combine carbs and fat into one meal or even one specific food, which makes it even worse, you won't feel as full because you don't have protein, you don't have fiber, and you don't have water. but you'll have a lot of calories. Fat, 9 calories per gram, carbs, 4 calories per gram, and it doesn't fill you up. And then along with salt, it just makes it even more addictive. That's why a lot of people are fat because they eat French fries and hamburgers from fast food every single day. So how can I apply this to my meals? Like I said before, if I have generally a fattier beef, then I only use lettuce. I don't put any other carb source in it. But if I use really lean beef, or if I use lamb or chicken or something, I can add potatoes or I can add rice on the side. And the same thing with beef and rice. If I have rice, then I have to have lean beef, because I don't want fatty beef and a carb source like rice in the same meal with seasoning. All right, so now you know how I eat, which is intuitive eating, tracking your weight based on satiety. You know what I eat, which is combining protein, fiber, and water into a single meal and making sure you're full after every single meal. Now we need to learn when you should be eating. So this when part is very important, because there's a lot of studies that show a smaller eating window makes you eat fewer calories. So this is what I mean. Let's say your eating window, you start breakfast at 6 a.m. because you have school, right? And then you eat lunch at 12 p.m. and you eat dinner at 6 p.m. You have a 12-hour eating window from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. And what that means is you get full here, then you get hungry, you get full here, you get hungry, then you get full again, and then you go to sleep. That's a lot of eating because you have these periods of hunger in between. So this is what I did to counteract it. It's called intermittent fasting. And it sounds fancy, but all it is just constraining your mealtime to around 6 to 8 hours. So instead of eating breakfast, I just skipped it. I ate lunch and dinner most of the time. And when you eat just lunch and dinner, let's say at 12 and then to 6, instead of having a 12-hour eating window where you have a period of getting full and then getting hungry, you just have getting full, getting hungry, and getting full. So you eat twice, and then because this time is shorter than just 12 hours overall, you'll eat fewer calories because you can't possibly cram that many calories into 2 meals to where you overeat if you're following the exact principles I'm laying out in this video. Once I got to the later stages of cutting, where your body reduced the amount of calories it uses because you've been cutting so long, I had to eat even fewer calories. So this is something that's not sustainable, but it works. Trust me, it works. It's called OMAD. And basically what it is 1 meal a day. So I would legit just eat lunch or dinner. And when I'm restricting my meals to 1 meal a day, I could literally eat till I'm like 200% full, but I wouldn't gain weight. And the reason for that is because if I eat stew or beef and rice for either of these meals, there is no way in this world where I'll eat more calories than I can burn and still be hungry. So what that means is I can eat as much as I want, but in the end, it doesn't matter how full I get, it will never be enough calories for me to gain weight because it's just one meal and the meals are so filling. So this is basically a cheat code to losing weight or not gaining weight. Like you can eat however much you want and you won't gain weight at all. Like if you can, then you have to be actually the most unhealthy person on the planet. But if you follow my dieting principles and the outlines of what I eat in a day, if you follow OMAD, you'll lose weight 100%. But of course, it's not sustainable. If you exercise a lot, I wouldn't suggest this. It's only if you don't exercise too intensely every day and you want to lose weight really quickly. All right, so now that you know how I eat, what I eat, and when I eat, let's put it all into a sample meal plan. So of course, we're gonna skip breakfast and then we're gonna go straight on to lunch. All right, for lunch, let's make some beef and rice, one of my favorites. So this takes about like 15 minutes of active cooking. First, you need to cook your rice, of course. And a good hack that I like to use is to cook it in meat stock or broth. I don't really know the difference, but you can cook it in either of these and it's just free protein because it just absorbs into the rice. And in, let's say like chicken stock, there's only protein in it, maybe like a tiny bit of fat and no carbs. So it's 100% cheat code. And then next you're gonna want about like 90-10 ground beef. You just throw that in a pan with some veggies like lettuce, cabbage. You can use corn carrots if you're mindful about how much you use. And then once you make that, you can just season with soy sauce, mirin, hot sauce, whatever you like. And now you go on to dinner. Let's say you're tired, you had a long day. So I would suggest coming back to a nice hearty stew. So for my beef stew, I just take beef. Sometimes I use chuck, or you can use other big roasts. Like if you really want to go low fat, you can do a round roast, which is basically like the hind leg of the cow. And it has basically 0 fat, but it doesn't taste like anything and it's super tough. So I usually use chuck for my stews. Basically what I do is I throw in a pot, I sear it a tiny bit, and then pour in water with all the other seasonings so that you can get some caramelization from the searing. And then with the water and seasoning, you just add that from the cutting triangle and you'll have a very filling meal. So some things that I like to season it with is salt, of course, garlic, and pepper. These are absolutely fantastic seasonings. If I'm feeling a little bit of fancy, then I'll add some tomatoes, of course. If I want some of that sweet flavor without adding too many calories, then I'll add tomatoes. And at the end of the cooking, at the very end for like about a minute max, I add in some romaine lettuce. Now, of course, you can use whatever vegetables you want, but I find romaine lettuce, if you chop it up into semi-small pieces, it's super tasty and it has an amazing crunch at the end. So if you follow this sample meal plan, yes, it will be boring, but I can guarantee you for 3 to 6 months after you test what you like to eat, you test your weight and you test your satiety, I can almost guarantee you amazing results if you just follow this. Now, of course, you don't have to. This is just what worked for me in particular. You can track your calories if you want. You can eat dessert if you track your calories. You can eat sometimes unhealthy food if you track your calories. But if you don't want to track your calories and you want to lose weight and you want to eat however much you want, this is an amazing meal plan that I came up with. And the next time I cut, I will be 100% following this again.